Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? Who dat's coming off the bye, heading to Atlanta to take on the Dirty Birds. Our buddy Mark Zinno, 92.9 The Game there in Atlanta. Also, you hear him nationally on ESPN Radio. Good enough to spend a couple minutes with us here on this Thanksgiving Eve. Mark, we appreciate you, man. How are you?
Matt, doing well. Always great to be with you, brother.
Thank you, man. Hey, let me just start with the biggest story, what I perceive anyway is the biggest story there in Atlanta this week, and that's going back to Desmond Ridder at quarterback. Can you just walk us through why ultimately that decision was made at this point?
I mean, he never really lost his job. He got benched because he couldn't hold on to the damn football. Like, you couldn't keep trotting him out there and watching him, make mistakes. He needed to kind of get a little spanking and put in time out for a little bit. That's all this really was. I mean, it was a pretty deliberate plan by Arthur Smith, to say the least, knowing what the situation was for the bye, and say, look, if Heineke lights it up for 2 weeks in a row, we'll revisit things at the bye, and we'll stay with him from that point on. But if he's as average as we expect him to be, which is pretty darn average, guess what? We can go back to Ridder right after the bye, give him 2 weeks to prepare for the Saints, and one of the few opponents from last year he's already seen, so maybe it helps him out a little bit. I mean, the biggest story in Atlanta, though, isn't even Desmond Ridder, which is kind of shocking to me. It's this fan base already wants Arthur Smith's head, which I can't understand. It's maniacal to me how we can sit there and blame Arthur Smith. I mean, Matt, take a look around the league, man. At least half of the league is starting a quarterback who is definitively not one of the 32 best quarterbacks on the planet that deserves the starting job in the NFL.
It's so
like, it's so obvious how bad. I haven't seen quarterbacking this bad in 20 years. Like, it's pathetically bad this year across the board. Even the guy you guys are starting doesn't look like he should be starting anymore. I know I'm not talking about Jameis, but Derek Carr, who I always defended, has turned into absolute poo in New Orleans. So, I mean, I don't know that this is Arthur Smith's fault. I mean, objectively, Falcons fans are moving the goalposts here. You took a flyer on a third-round kid from Cincinnati, not even a Power 5 school, and hoped it would work out. It doesn't look like it's going to work out. You can't say that for sure. I mean, the guy's only played 12 games in his career, but, you see C.J. Stroud, he's played 10 games in his career, and he looks like the real deal. So you kind of know when it is. You might not know when it isn't, but you definitely know when it is. And to this point, Desmond Ridder isn't it. Look, the offense with him under center was much more productive. Even while they were losing games because of turnovers, they were still putting up close to 400 yards of offense every week. That's getting lost. You can't score points without getting yards, right? They're interchangeable. So if you're moving the ball, you're much closer. And the other biggest problem is the Falcons had the red zone have stunk. Now, that's on Smith. That is on the coach. He's got to fix that. He's got to figure out a way to execute better in the red zone, call better plays and everything else. But, long story short, to a very, very long answer to a short question, it's more shocking that Arthur Smith is, at least in the eyes of Atlanta fans, should be coaching for his job, even though he's not.
Let's dig deeper on the offense, though, Mark, because, I see this offense that has presumably a lot of talent, right? I mean, you draft Bijan Robinson, you got Kyle Pitts, you got Drake London, yet it's 18 points a game, just under 19 points a game. What is the main culprit there? Why isn't Atlanta scoring more? Why aren't they more dynamic offensively?
Well, you got to remember, the turnovers, too. Two of them from Ridder came in the red zone. You're knocking on the doorstep here. And the red zone efficiency has been bad. That's really what it boils down to. When you talk about yards per play, Falcons are in the top half of the league. When you talk about yards per point, they're in the bottom 5. These are metrics that not only odds makers use, but if you're going to power rate teams, this is what you use to figure out who's good and who isn't. So, there's a certain amount of just getting literally across the goal line that they have to do on a more consistent basis. I think some of that is on the coach. But, again, remember, and this goes to more big picture stuff here. The Falcons chose to build their team this way. Go get a running back, go get a wide receiver, go get what is supposed to be a Swiss Army knife toy as a tight end. We'll revisit that later. But anyway, you give them all these things to play with, and you give them all these weapons, and then you get the quarterback. Or you could do it like how the Panthers are doing it. Draft the guy at the top of the draft, have him absolutely have nothing around him, nobody to block for him, nobody to hand the ball to, nobody to throw the ball to, and look what Bryce Young is reduced to. A guy who looks like he should be playing Pee Wee football. So, I mean, the Falcons tried to give Ridder everything that they needed, and he has it, and he's using it, although, again, people in Atlanta will tell you that Bijan Robinson isn't being used correctly, although he's got the second most usage rate of any rookie in the NFL behind Jamar Gibbs. And the only reason why Jamar Gibbs is number one is because Dave Montgomery was out for 3 weeks. So it's not like they're not using all the weapons that they have. Drake London is a dude. I think that guy will end up being a top 5 receiver in this league in a couple of years if he gets a quarterback who can legitimately get him the ball on a routine basis. But again, this all goes back to one position, as I keep indicating. You guys are probably sick of me saying this, but that's part of it. I mean, it's the red zone stuff has got to be fixed. You got to figure out a way to just get the plays that work. And I would tell you that running a jet sweep to Jonnu Smith, where you have Kyle Pitts, who we now know can't block, trying to block Danielle Hunter, it's probably a bad play to run in the red zone. That's on Arthur Smith. Like, stop running jet sweeps with Jonnu Smith, okay, and just get the ball to Drake, give the ball to Bijan, and be simple about it. But then again, look, this is not a great offensive line up front. So you're dealing with that as well. There's a myriad of things that are going on here, and I just don't think it's the coach. I genuinely don't. This is about Jimmys and Joes, not X's and O's.
Mark Zinno's with us. 92.9 The Game there in Atlanta, on Twitter at Mark Zinno. Flip it over to defense, Mark. Look, Ryan Nielsen into DC. There's a lot of familiarity here, right, with all the ties. David Onyemata's there. Caden Ellis is the leading tackler. Does this defense resemble what the Saints like to do or were doing under Dennis Allen with Nielsen going over there? Has Nielsen sort of just reinvented himself or reinvented that defense?
He's pretty good. I'm not sure why you guys let him go. You should have paid him more. Like, Terry Fontenot's like, hey, I'll take this Nielsen guy. He'll come with me and revamp the defense. Yeah, I mean, that was a very smart. No, not to mention, too, they invested $100 million on the defensive side of the ball to actually get better players, right? Like, back to Jimmy's and Joe's again. Like, if you get better players, your defense is generally better. Jesse Bates has been a phenomenal free agent, pull at safety. He's certainly solidified the back end. We know what A.J. Terrell can do, but you just talk about the linebacking core and better tackling team, and they're just more disciplined. They're really smart. And this is, by the way, for the last 3 weeks, they're still without Grady Jarrett, who's one of the top 3 defensive tackles in the league. So imagine if they had him back. I mean, that's probably one fortunate thing for you guys, that you'll have a little bit of more freedom up front without Grady in there. But Nielsen has been everything. I mean, the guy's great. I mean, he grew a creepy mustache like Arthur Smith did, which I don't recommend. But beyond that, the guy can coach defense. I mean, he just flat out can. And that's why this defense is – and that's the crazy part. It's like, for years in Atlanta, they couldn't find a top 10 defense with a roadmap and a flashlight. Now they got one, and all of a sudden their offense can't find the end zone with a roadmap and a flashlight. So, welcome to Atlanta. That's kind of the way it goes. But yeah, I mean, I can't say enough good things about Ryan Nielsen and what he's done. This defense plays inspired football. They're really smart. They take advantage of opportunities. And look, they don't get to the quarterback as far as bringing him down with the regularity. But when you talk about pressure rate, knockdown rate, hurry rate, Falcons are in the top 5 in the league in all those categories. So they're affecting the quarterback enough to force them to make mistakes, and that's really helping them stay in games.
And if it comes down to a kick, I think everyone knows Younghoe Koo is one of the best in the league, and the Saints have had their own trouble there. But obviously, I'm sure a lot of people know that Mark's also a betting analyst with Wager Talk. And remember, you and I talked before the season, and one of the things that you thought there was a lot of value was the Falcons' odds to win the division, and here you are with 7 games left, and they're a game behind New Orleans. When you sort of project both of these teams and the rest of the NFC South, what do you see there, Mark, as you look at the final 2 months of the season?
Well, I mean, look, this is everything for the Falcons this game, right? You win this game, you have a tiebreaker in hand over the Saints, and you're tied for the best record in the division. Obviously they're going to play one more time, but you lose this game, you fall 2 back, and now you're already in the hole where you're going to need extra help just to push with the Saints. So if the Falcons lose this game, effectively, I think their divisional chances are done. Could they come back and win and get a wild card spot in a pretty mediocre, middle of the road NFC? Possibly, but you come back from 4-7, make a wild card spot, and finish this thing 9-8 or 10-7. It's a pretty spectacular run that I don't know that with the quarterback that they have it in them.
That's
right?
Fair.
So I mean, as much as there is a must-win game in Week 12 for your season, this is pretty much it, and I think Arthur Smith knows that. In fact, I was kind of surprised to see the Falcons installed as a favorite here. Kind of tells you what odds makers think of New Orleans and the offense, that it's just, God, so painful to watch. They beat the Patriots 34-0 and then stink it up the rest of the way. Like, what the hell was that about?
I think they had a defensive score in that game, Zinno.
Lord.
There was a lot of turnovers they turned into points. I mean, it was one of those types of days, man.
I mean, look, I would have thought, I would have thought Derek Carr was going to elevate. I really did. I always defended Derek Carr when he was with the Raiders. The numbers that he put up were just always fantastic, and he was on bad teams and bad defenses, and he was finally going to a place with a good defense, and it just hasn't happened. And I'll ask this question because I kind of, curious what Saints fans think. But I kind of feel like Dennis Allen's like part of the problem. Like, I don't know if he's a very good overall coach. Defensively, I think he's very good, but I just don't get a feeling that he's a good coach. Am I wrong?
Zinno, it's like everyone's screaming it from the mountaintops. Like, why is this guy still the coach? It's very clear. I mean, I've been shouting for 2 years. He's a lieutenant, not a general. He's a really good defensive coordinator. He's a terrible head coach. Pete Carmichael's is an awful play caller.
And that's the thing. You can tell, and this is what I say about Arthur Smith. And go back to Dan Quinn. When the Falcons started to struggle, you could tell Quinn was overwhelmed. He was overwhelmed by everything. He was overwhelmed meeting with the media. He was overwhelmed with the game plan. He was overwhelmed with game management. You could tell, right? And I don't say there's a knock on Dan because I love the guy. He's a great person and a heck of a defensive coach. But some guys in that head spot, they can't handle it all. And again, go back to bad quarterback play. There are 4 coaches in the league right now that I would trust: Reed, Shanahan, Harbaugh, and probably Sirianni. That's about it. After that, all these other guys, it's how are you still a coach in this league? How did you? Who do you have naked pictures of that you still get to coach every week in the NFL? We've hit this weird spot in the NFL where mediocrity is insanely high, and maybe it's all correlated because quarterbacks and coaches are everything of what make teams win. But I look at the Saints, I'm like, that's still a really good defense, and I don't understand what Kamara and Olave and everything else that's even the shell that was Michael Thomas, but still you got Lattimore on the defense. There's just a lot of good players, and it's they're 5-5, and they have some stinkers on their record.
It's perplexing, but obvious at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Hey, before you go, where's the value? You mentioned it's a virtual pick'em. I think Atlanta is a 1-point choice here at home. What do you think about Sunday at noon?
Oh God, I wouldn't bet this game straight up with your money.
I'd bet it with your money.
Well, sure. Then if you're going to do that, then just take the under straight up. But look, I think the Saints, if you're getting a 1.5, are an absolute fantastic teaser option because the Falcons can't beat anybody by margin. Yeah. Right? Not without a defensive score or something, or a special team stuff. Not without something quirky happening. So there's a lot of great teaser options out there this week that you can get to. You want to take the Texans and the Saints, knock yourself out. I think that those are 2 games that are really, really good. If you want to look past Thanksgiving, obviously, and why not even take the Browns to 7.5? Credit to Russell Wilson because he's played really well this year. But that offense, man, it is just painful to watch how they just continue to settle for field goals. It's it's Teddy KGB and Rounders just hanging around. You can't get rid of the Broncos. And at the end of the day, the Broncos offense is it's like when the lights come out at the bar at 2 a.m. It doesn't have to look pretty, but it'll get you home. That's what it boils down to.
He is Mark Zinno on Twitter at Mark Zinno. 92.9 The Game there in Atlanta. You hear him nationally on ESPN Radio as well. Check out his gambling content. Follow him on Twitter. You're the best, man. Happy Thanksgiving. Thanks for a couple of minutes, all right?
Same to you. Always a pleasure, brother. Stay well.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.